Hi, I'm Ahava Lead Tag. Today I'm joined by my good friend, Alan Shoebridge, to talk about personal branding and LinkedIn strategy. You've got questions, we've got answers. Alan, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for
So,
having me. It's my pleasure.
where do you start when you think about, okay, what are the most important channels we need to own? And how do we think about how to make sure that we are managing them in the best way possible for our audiences?
Yeah. Well, I think it goes back to like what actions you want people to take. What are you trying to do? Some places and organizations are really trying to drive conversions. Like they have services, they have slots available, they need to get people into it. That's one thing. I think other organizations are more maintaining or trying to retain. Like, how do we just service the people we have, get them the information or the pathways they need? How do we do that? And I think it's different. I think the tactics and strategies and channels might differ depending on what you want to do, where your audience is, who you're trying to convert. We often think about like in healthcare, like who is the target audience for what we're providing, and that skews the audience a lot of times. So, if you're trying to promote hip replacement surgery or whatever, right? It's very different than a lot of other services you might offer. So I don't know. I always think it goes back to figuring out what do you have available, who's the market, and how do you reach them, and then you build your strategy around that.
How can I be a good team player and continue to build my brand on LinkedIn? Which, by the way, Alan, nobody is better at than you. Like you are the superstar, hot pink star to Alan for doing that. So, how would you answer this person? And then, if you could walk us through your own journey of figuring out how to do that.
It's a really good question. So thanks to whoever submitted that. I think the place to start is figuring out the truth about what matters to your organization, because I've worked for different organizations and I feel like they fall into three categories. Either they want to actively participate, they want you to actively participate, they see the value in you being active and you promoting not only yourself but where you work, or they don't really care one way or the other. And maybe it's like that question, the vibes might be one way or the other, but or they actively discourage it. I think they fall into one of those three categories. I think that obviously the best place is to work for someone progressive that understands being active is good for you, it's good for our organization. You're telling stories about where you work and some of your content, like that's a good thing. Um, I would encourage that person to actually have a direct conversation with their manager. How do you feel about this? Are you okay with it? Maybe they are okay with it. Maybe they just don't understand it. Maybe they don't understand what you're trying to do. So I think having that conversation makes a lot of sense. I think with company posts too, and I interact with a lot of the content we do, obviously at Providence where I work. I think you just need to feel authentic, like share company information when it feels good. If you like participated in the story or you have a connection to it or you feel proud of it, like share those. You don't have to share every single thing. Like that's where I think people get a little caught up. Do I need to share everything we're doing? Do I need my content to only be about the company? No, like you can have those personal things and do what feels good to you. I think it's always a great strategy. Do what you enjoy, share what you like, but it doesn't have to be overwhelming. But I think assess your situation and then have a conversation with your leader. Like, would this be valuable? Here's what I'm thinking about. Don't leave it to chance. I think have the conversation is the best strategy.
I agree. Anybody who knows me knows I'm a big fan of direct conversations.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you about you though. How did Alan Shoebridge
Mhm.
see the opportunity that social media afforded professionally? Like what made you think, did you even think to yourself, like, I'm gonna build my personal brand, or was it more like it
Mm.
just sort of rolled like a snowball?
Yeah, I don't think I ever like really thought about the channels of social or whatever and thinking like I need to leverage this to build a brand or whatever. But I remember, one time where I worked, this was a different organization, it was years ago. I remember walking by someone's office and someone made the comment like, what does that person even do here? And I was like, it clicked with me. I'm like, that's never a situation you want to find yourself in. You don't want people to say that. You don't want people to say that about where you work. So you need to build your brand internally at work. You need to, take opportunities to do new things. You need to build a positive reputation. And then I think it's kind of grew from there of like, well, what are the things I can do outside of work that again just connects me to more people, brings up opportunities. I really got started in like writing content. I wanted to write articles. I wanted to write articles for organizations and publications that were in my field. And then that led to more things like presentations and now in sort of more modern area, webinars and all those things that you can do, podcasts like this. And I've just known, and for many years, and I think I kind of put it into a concept in the last few years, the more people who know you for something good is never bad, right? And
Right.
and so thinking about how you can like leverage a platform like LinkedIn to build connections, like I think that's how we met, you and I, right?
Yeah,
If
absolutely.
we had never like connected on LinkedIn, we probably would have never sought each other out at a conference. We would never have said like, oh, it'd be great to do a podcast, right? So you have to like build those connections. And what I think people forget a lot is like you need to build connections before that they even are valuable to you. Like, like you can pay people forward. You can like connect with people who you can help, things like that. Because if you want to grow in your career, again, people need to know you. They need to know your value internally and externally.
Well, I think it's interesting you're talking about value, because one of the things that's interesting about why I first noticed you and why I wanted to connect to you was that you did provide value. So when you posted, when you wrote, when I saw you on webinars, I always felt like he's experiencing something that he wants to share. And his own personal experience is valuable for me to learn from. He's inside organizations. He sees what's going on. You're very future forward thinking. So you're always like talking about what might happen, what we should be thinking about. So when you're giving this advice to the person who wrote in about like, I want to build my personal brand, did you, and it doesn't sound like you did, but you clearly have like a mental framework for like, what am I going to post? What am I going to interact with? Like, what's the guiding North Star? Is there one?
That's really funny. I think the best content strategy is the one you'll actually do. So like, if you have to force it, it won't work, right? So if you hate doing videos, if you don't like doing a podcast like this, trying to force it will never work. So I really leaned in, I think when I got started, to what I enjoyed most, which was writing. So I like to write articles, I like to write posts. I leaned into that a lot. And then I think over time I became comfortable with more things like, oh yeah, let's do a podcast, let's do a video. I'm willing to do those kind of things. So I feel like to get started for people, it's lean into what you like to do the most. And, again, seeing people who do videos like that might give you a sense of like, I should really be doing that. But if you don't like doing it, if it's not comfortable, that's not a good place to start. So I think you start with what's comfortable to you and you build from there. And that's the best way to get started. Just enjoy it. And, people do often ask, like, how do I just get started? And I'll go back to something we were talking about a little bit. Well, one opportunity is participating in your company's content. If your company's out there sharing things, add a comment, repost it, whatever, if it speaks to you, that's an easy way to get started. Or if you have a perspective on the industry, share it. There's so much news happening. And, one thing that I've always been, I have a lot of opinions about things. So I don't ever have I never have writer's block. If there's something happens in the industry,
Don't brag about that, dude.
yeah. So, but I think I just go back to the fact, lean into what you enjoy, and that'll be your best content strategy to get started.
Here's what I see on LinkedIn right now. Self-congratulatory posting, thanking 70 colleagues in one post. AI is going to kill us. AI is the best thing ever. How I made millions with AI. This post should have been on Instagram. This post should have been on Facebook. What's your feeling about what's happening on LinkedIn right now? And what do you think about what's going to happen with it?
I still really like LinkedIn. And for me, it's the best social media feed that I have in terms of like balancing the personal, professional, and interesting. And I think the number one thing people need to remember is, in large ways, you are responsible for the experience you are getting. So if you're following a lot of people that you don't like their content, stop following them. Don't interact with their content. You can hit the little button on the side that says, I'm not interested in this post. You'll see less of it. And cultivate, network, and bring people into your feed that you like their content. That is the best way to have a good experience on LinkedIn. And I think so many people struggle because I don't like what I'm seeing. Okay, well, take some actions to see less of that stuff and more of what you like. You can go on LinkedIn, on the profile, they have a little bell you can ring. If they like seeing stuff from Ahava, like ring the bell, you'll get more Ahava stuff, right?
Yeah.
And if conversely, people you don't like, unfollow those people so you don't get their content. And I think that's one thing that I would just encourage people to do. And then most people, and I get it, but a lot of people don't contribute, right? So I think there's some stat like, I don't know, 97% of people never post anything, right? So you can also change by being one of those people that post some content, right? And again, that'll open you up to more connections, get more people in your network that you like, and remove the people you don't like. You'll have a better experience. I enjoy LinkedIn. I don't see a lot of bad stuff. I would say on a given day, and I go on, multiple times, I don't know, one or two posts that I don't like at most. That, and again, I try to very deliberately not interact with, like if I leave a comment on a post I don't like, I'm going to get more of those posts. So don't do that.
Do you have a thought in your mind of a post that you wrote or that you participated in where something really interesting came out of it or did make you think differently about something?
Well, one of the things I'm most proud of doing on LinkedIn is about 3.5 years ago, I wrote an article about how long it takes to get comfortable at work. And I published the article and it did okay. It got a decent response. But then I noticed in the years since then, I keep getting pings on this article. Like people keep finding it and they add comments like, this really helped me. I started a new job. It's really great. I love that because I enjoyed writing about it, but I never really thought like this is going to continually be a resource for people. I just did it because I was interested in the topic and I hoped it would help people in the moment. And then, like about, I don't know, 9 months or so, I started getting a lot of pings on this article. And it was because it was being featured on Google in the AI results. It was one of the articles that was driving the answer to the question. Now, right now it's not featured, so I'm not getting as much pings, but for a while I was. And it just struck me that I love creating content that can help people. And then you think about things like article formats that just have a much longer lifespan than a post. It's there. And so that one I just go back to. Every time I start forgetting about it, I'll get a ping or I'll get a comment of someone who like, I just started a new job this week. This was really helpful. So I love that. It's just been a great one. And again, I think I wrote it super quick article. I never thought it would really have something that has legs. And then, now almost 4 years later, like it's still going, it's still getting interaction.
That's a great story. I think it's such a good point. The two things that you said that really resonated with me. The first is that the long life of an article. In our short world, a lot of us have stopped writing and creating content that really does last. And I think it's really important to remember that those things are important. And then the other thing that I really liked about what you said is that you wrote about something that was important to you. It wasn't necessarily about healthcare marketing. It wasn't necessarily about AI or SEO or internal communications. It was like, hey, how long does it take to get comfortable at work? And that's something that you have experience in and you thought you could share. And I think, you talked about the 97% of people who never post anything. Trust me, you have something to share, whoever you are. And so share from your own experience. I recently wrote an email newsletter that got republished on LinkedIn. And I did get a lot of responses to this email newsletter. Most of the time, I don't get a ton of responses. Like people don't necessarily write back all the time, but on LinkedIn, they really do respond to it. I wrote about just life being really difficult right now and having a lot of challenges in my life and just showing up at the mat, this Peloton. I talked about this. I have this one Peloton instructor who always says, thank you for joining me today on the mat. You showed up. That's what you did. You did like the first step. And it got so many reactions. And I realized I spoke from the heart. Because I spoke from the heart, it really, it spoke to other people's hearts. And I think that I do have a little bit of a challenge around that though, because is LinkedIn a place for that? And is that just a mirror of our society where professionally and personally, we're really just trying to blur those lines a little bit so that we all come across as a little bit more human? Yeah. What's your take on that?
It's a really good question. I think like each person has to find their balance, but I think like authenticity is key. Like I really don't like when I read something from someone and I know that's not them. Like it's not their personality. They're forcing something that's not authentic. Like it just doesn't connect. I do think there's a place for personal stuff. I just think it's less on LinkedIn than it is other platforms or other avenues, but there is a place for it. And so again, if you're thinking of like a percentage of your content or something like, yeah, maybe it's like 20% personal stuff. And then people are interested in you. That's why they decide to connect with you as a person, right? So they are intrigued and obviously like the skills you have and they want to know about that. But if they've really connected with you, like they want to know the personal side too. So I think just being authentic and showing some vulnerability from time to time is good. I just think it's one of those platforms where you don't want to overwhelm people. Like that's all I'm posting all the time.
I think it's a really good point. Yeah. I tell this story about my daughter, Amaya. She had a blood disorder. And I tell this story about how the doctor was talking to me and like my mind went blank at the time, even though I've written about this disorder like 1,000 times. And I tell this story to sort of talk to people about why plain language is so important and why calming people down when they're getting bad, news is really important. And I cannot tell you how many times at conferences, I've been telling this story maybe for like 5 or 6 years, people will come over to me, they're like, how's your daughter doing? So when Amaya has a big milestone, like when she graduated from high school, I posted and I said, for those of you who know Amaya, like I want to let you know she's doing really well. And I think that's a really great example of where, I'm a mom. It's obvious I'm a mom. I talk about my kids all the time in my writing. And that story resonates with our community, with our healthcare communication community, and they want to know how's she doing. So using LinkedIn in that way, it doesn't necessarily feel like I'm opening a box I don't want to open, but it's about sharing something I've already shared and updating people. And people are always so excited when I post about her, they're like, oh, she's doing so well, and it just shows you that people are good, Yeah.
And I mean, they want to know there's more behind Ahava than just the post about healthcare marketing, right? Or AI or whatever. Like, no, this is a real person who has real emotions and feelings and experiences. And like, I want part of that. Now, maybe I don't want it every single time, but I do want it occasionally.
Yeah. Alan, I always want to give people the chance to talk about something that they're thinking about right now, like something that's been pressing on them. So is there anything that you kind of want, a question that you kind of want answered or something that you're thinking about that is sort of not keeping you up at night, but you're, it's marinating somewhere in the back of your head?
Yeah, that's good. That's a good question. I mean, I think for one, I mean, I know it's kind of the thing of the moment to talk about, but I really do wonder like what AI will do to the profession. So especially for me now, I'm definitely firmly rooted on the communication side of things. I'm less on the marketing side now than I've ever been. But I really do wonder what it means, like what does it mean for authenticity? for people to really understand how to write. I think being able to write is so important to being able to think, so what does that mean? And then what does it mean for people that are coming into the profession? If I was like 25 years old right now, I'm not, I'm way away from that. But if that was me, like, I'd be concerned. Like, what does it look like to, can you start out as a junior copywriter now, and can you parlay that into a long career? Or, in a couple years, does that role not exist because it's being done by AI? I think that really does kind of like keep me up. It does keep me up a little bit at night thinking about that.
Yeah, doesn't keep me up.
Well, I'm just intrigued by the fact, like, and I guess, maybe I'm over-indexing in my experience, but so much of like how I think has come from writing, and just like writing about a topic, and
Yeah.
then, and now there's kind of a shortcut, which in many ways that shortcut's good, but what does it mean long term? And I was just, I was reading something the other night about the death of the college essay, because like, is that even going to be a thing?
Do you know how they're evaluating kids now on how they prompt AI? Not
Yeah.
even like
Yeah.
Here's what I'm thinking about it. And I'm not telling it to give you an answer. I'm just sharing my own experience. We started off painting on cave walls. We got to writing, and that's a form of technology. It's a form of expression, and there'll be new forms of expression. I also think, I remember watching The Crown and watching the telephone operators switch the wires, and it's not automatic switching. And those people found jobs doing other things. And I think that, change is just part of the human condition. Now, the speed of which our generations are undergoing change is, I think, in some ways, it takes out a lot. It's exhausting for people, But I also remember when SEO first changed, and I remember like Panda, when they updated Panda, and like that threw everybody into a tizzy. And I remember when social medias took over, and I just think I can't feel the drama anymore every time, because it all just shakes out. And in some ways it creates new jobs and new opportunities for expertise and new opportunities to educate people. What keeps me up at night is misinformation. And the lack of belief in science in our society anymore. That to me is the scary part, is that AI could be used in a dangerous way.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't think writing is going to go away, just like painting didn't go away either. Not that we're painting on caves, now we paint on canvases, but
Well, and I mean, there's going to be an opportunity for a real like human content standing out. And it is why it's a great point, because you mentioned like Taylor Swift. I mean, like, AI can create a pop song. Do you want to listen to it? Probably not. And like how much of your experience with like Taylor Swift is not just the music, but her life and her story, and knowing that she wrote the songs, and like that's the value, right? So I mean, I think that will stay the same, and that's good. And again, I hope, to what you were saying too, with some of the misinformation, like that critical thinking piece is important. And a lot of times people will say like, oh, AI can teach you everything you need to know in 30 seconds. I'm like, no, it can't. So like there is a process that is valuable to go through. I think you're right. Like, it'll shake out. We'll see how it happens. And again, I don't consider myself, like, you hear like doomers and boomers. I'm not either. I'm neither one of those. I'm somewhere in the middle.
I am too. I think it's great. It's really helped us with a lot of our workflow issues. Obviously, we don't use it to create or draft content because we think that's regurgitation, and that's exactly the opposite of what we're here to do. But I think it's what you said when you were talking about somebody who wants to build a personal brand, and maybe their manager is concerned about that. It's all about direct conversations. If we understand how the technology and the tool is really working, I think we can help people use it in the most positive ways possible. Hey, Alan, how can people find you if they want to reach out and learn more and connect with you as a person?
Well, LinkedIn, we talked about it. You find me there. I'm definitely open to connections, so I hope people will find me there. And then also, I have a website, alanshoebridge.com, and you can find my blog. I write about a lot of stuff there too. So love to connect with people. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. It means a lot to me, and it means a lot to my audience. So thank you.
It was a pleasure. Love doing it.